first presidential contest right around the corner now, and the Republican candidates are ramping up attacks on each other. So now it's just like one long debate night. Check out these new ads from pro-Trump and pro-Haley PACs.
I will not now, not ever, support raising the gas tax.
Really? Not now? Not ever? Just 24 months later, high-tax Haley flipped.
Of all the Republicans running for president, why is Donald Trump only attacking Nikki Haley? Because Trump knows Haley's the only one who can beat him.
And Nikki Haley has made some gains in New Hampshire. The Real Clear Politics average of polls shows she jumped by more than 15 points since September, and her team is not only focused on the former president.
In a world of chaos, the last thing America needs is another dumpster fire.
The support for Ron DeSantis plummeting.
Republican voters are just not that into DeSantis.
The first Republican showdown, 26 days away from now. New Hampshire, 8 days after that. Gianno Caldwell, Fox News political analyst. Richard Fowler, Fox News contributor. Gentlemen, great to see you both. Gianno, I'm going to start with you and where the Republican race is now. And are you kind of hearing from voters that they understand it at this point to be a race for second place to Donald Trump?
I think you just hit it right on the head, Harris. This is a race for second place, potentially a race for vice president. I think Nikki Haley would make an exceptional vice president if she were to choose to join Donald Trump. But in my opinion, this race is completely over. The primary is too far away for any of the candidates, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, any of these guys that catch up to Donald Trump. And the more we keep seeing things like Colorado, these court cases only provides a greater support system for Donald Trump, because Republican voters see it as an attack on them.
In fact, Richard, my earlier guest, Leo Terrell, said something interesting. He wants to see a profile in courage now from Biden, and Kamala Harris, president and vice president, respectively, obviously, on this whole thing that's playing out with Donald Trump and keeping him off the ballot in Colorado. What do you make of it?
Well, on the Colorado ballot issue, I think it's unprecedented, so we have to see. I think we're going to have to see what happens here. I do think that you will likely hear something from the White House later today, based on my sources there. And I also think you're going to hear something from the Supreme Court, which could be the ultimate determiner on that. Where I agree with Gianno is on this idea that this court case does provide some fodder for Trump as we get closer to this midterm election, almost tightens his base a little bit more. But with that being said, I'm not sure that this primary is quite over yet until voters actually have their say. I think what the rise of Nikki Haley in the polls, and I think after Iowa, the fact that you'll likely see Chris Christie, maybe Ron DeSantis, maybe Vivek Ramaswamy drop out the race, this could become a two-person race. And with if you add those numbers up, there is not a big window, a very small window, maybe a crack in that very small window for Nikki Haley to make a play to be the potential nominee for the GOP.
It's so interesting to hear Democrats say that, because I would think you wouldn't want to face her anyway, because she actually leads all of the Republicans, including Donald Trump, in a percentage above Joe Biden. Let's move to this. If the race were held today, the presidential election. Low approval ratings, voters down on Joe Biden on the top issues, but another number is raising some frustrations among the president's team. The number is 81. Yes, he's an octogenarian. A new report says Biden is reluctant to accept his old age. Aides say, an excerpt here, President Biden's reluctance to acknowledge his physical limitations is causing some tension on his team as senior aides and First Lady Jill Biden push him to rest more and be vigilant about his health going into 2024. The author of the piece said this.
Biden, behind closed doors, repeatedly says, I feel so much younger than my age. And he says it so often and with such real sincerity that there has become this tension where he ends up overextending himself, that basically aides feel that he does not know his own physical limitations and that he tries to do too much. And, that has this adverse effect where he ends up wearing himself out. So even though he is doing more events, he actually presents as more tired.
So Alex Thompson also reports that the First Lady has taken on a very active role in trying to get the president to pull back. And we'll stop right there. I want to go right back to my guest. Richard, what do you make of all of this?
Look, I'm not going to engage in the palace intrigue here, right? Listen, I think what we do know, we've been talking about this for...
Palace intrigue?
The palace intrigue...
You don't believe people closest to him.
Let me be very clear. When I say palace intrigue, I'm talking about what the First Lady's office is doing and what the.
That's
what
not palace intrigue.
No,
she's
but I
not
think,
supposed to be running
listen,
the country, so she's trying to run him.
Harris, and I've said this whether it was Donald Trump in the White House or Joe Biden in the White House, when you have unnamed aides making comments to reporters, for me, I find that to be problematic. If you're going to say it, put your name on it.
So you want to impugn all journalism. You don't think we can have our sources
and that
those sources aren't good? And by the way, when you get north of 3 sources, now remember, how many staff members have been talking all along? That's a lot to say that you don't believe they're reporting.
I agree with triple sourcing, and I won't deny the president's age. I'm saying I won't comment on the policy intrigue.
Now, with that being said,
with that being said, what I will say is this time last year, I want to say we did a segment on this date last year. We were talking about the ideal of the potential of a possible recession. As we move into this Christmas holiday, we're not having that conversation. So while his age is indeed a problem,
Richard Fowler,
the president
I have never
does have
seen
an opportunity
whataboutism like you play it.
The
You
president
just
has
went
the
to
opportunity to talk
2022
about.
and a conversation
Sure,
about a possible
because
recession
this
to avoid talking about the inevitable with Joe Biden.
No.
I'm going to go to the other guest now.
I'll acknowledge his age. I've said it. He's old. Nobody's denying that.
Actually, you know what, John? I'm going to come to you first after this. I was watching. Late night host Jimmy Fallon was mocking Joe Biden's age last night with a fake Christmas card from the president. Watch this.
The front of the card says, "Do you hear what I hear?" Open up, it says, "Do you?" Because I'm hearing something like a buzz from an air conditioner. Or is it feedback from a hearing aid? Let's just go old school. Jill, where's my ear horn?
It's not palace intrigue, Jono.
Good to see comedians actually roasting the president, which used to be their job. They used to do that until Donald Trump came around, and it was all about Donald Trump. It's interesting in the last point about what Richard said, because the palace intrigue, we've been seeing him comment on when Donald Trump was in office over and over again, regardless if it was a named source or not. And you have, Richard. We've been doing this for over 7 years, so I know that. And I've been on television with you. Why you do that? The truth of the matter is Democrats are very much afraid of multiple issues that Joe Biden has, which is alienating voters. His age is one of them. The border is another one. Inflation is another one. And the economy is another one. Fox News polling just recently out. Republicans, 93% have a negative view of the economy. Democrats, 61%. It's a problem.
All right.
Let's be very
Richard,
clear,
I just
though.
take issue with the fact that you think any of the reporting
No,
these reports
I'm not
wouldn't
denying
be
the
correct
reporting,
about Joe Biden.
but
and that
Harris,
his staff members would lie about the sort of thing that they
To be
roll
fair,
their
and to be
eyes?
clear, if you pull any of the tapes when Trump was in office and folks lamented on how many times he went on vacation, I was one of the first people to say, I don't think this is a reportable story. This is not news here. The president should be allowed to take a vacation. I don't care who it is.
Well,
My
the
point
president
here
said,
is,
watch him. We've seen
let's
him
talk
fall,
about the
do
facts,
all
and let's
sorts
talk
of
about the
things.
indicators, and let's not talk about people who are unnamed sources. That's it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. If the president gets as tired and it really takes the first lady to slow down his pace, that will become more public than you want it to be.